Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, right. Oh, there we go. Hello. Hi. Hi. All right. This is Canine Complex and Friends. My name is Jillian. I am a dog trainer and a dog training assistant over here at Canine Complex and Friends.
And I am Janine. I'm the owner and head trainer. And we are back again for another Ask the Trainer.
Yes.
Today, we want to talk about the idea of transitioning between different emotional states for dogs. And what we are looking at is throughout the years of working with various dogs that are fearful and high arousal and somehow I'm recording.
Oh.
Okay. That are fearful, high arousal, and reactive. I realized one of the most consistent issues that I saw was dogs having difficulty switching emotional states. So they could easily relax or maybe do what you're asking them to do. But if they've been triggered or having a fearful or reactive episode, they would have a hard time getting back to normal emotional regulation. So, in the process of trying to get my notes, there we go. In the process of trying to work with these dogs and helping them to get themselves into a more regulated state and something where they could maybe see another dog, for example, become a little bit reactive, bark a little bit, but then very quickly bring themselves back into some sort of regulation or comfortable zone. So I came up with kind of a protocol that I just simply call transitions to help dogs to navigate these different states. So what I did was came up with three basically more or less positive emotional states that we kind of want our dogs to navigate, meaning something that is comfortable for them typically, something that they can do to help them focus. So we're not really looking at practicing reactivity or high arousal or anything of that sort. So the three components, the three emotional states that I focus on is relaxation, work, and play. And to give a little bit of a kind of explanation as to what do these emotional states actually mean and how do they benefit our dog when the dog is learning how to navigate these different states. First of all, relaxation is defined as anything that your dog finds relaxing. Humans all have different things that help them feel relaxed. Sometimes it's sleeping, sometimes it's laying down and doing nothing, sometimes it's going for a jog. I'm sure that there are people that enjoy things like rock climbing or skydiving, and that makes them feel relaxed. So everybody has a different concept of what is relaxing. And that's what we're looking for with the dog. When I start teaching this, I typically start with the dogs just simply relaxing on their mat with some massage, mirroring calming signals, anything like that. Just having the dog on their mat, getting some pet, and just being relatively chill and comfortable. Now, of course, all dogs don't find this comfortable. When you're talking about high arousal dogs, they can find it very uncomfortable, in fact. They may not want to be touched. They may not be able to hold still for any kind of extended period of time. So for them, we have to determine what is relaxing for that type of dog. Secondly, what is work? Work is a situation in which transactional behavior is happening between handler or owner or caretaker and dog. Meaning the caretaker is asking the dog to do something, and when the dog complies, the dog is given a reinforcement. Typically we use food, but it doesn't have to be food. Some dogs don't find food reinforcing. We want to use, again, what is most reinforcing for that dog. The thing to remember with the work portion is that is the only component out of the three in which we're using food. For relaxation, we are not going to use food, and also for play, we are not going to use food if possible. But for work, we are using some sort of high-value reinforcement. So again, that can be defined differently for each dog. It doesn't have to look the same for everybody. Some dogs that are fearful don't know a lot of behaviors. They may not even know how to sit. So that's fine if you can get eye contact and then reinforce your dog. That can be considered work. Other dogs, border collies, for example, are going to do trick, behavior, and don't care if they're reinforced. They just thrive on performing those behaviors. So we need to, again, look at what is unique for each individual dog. It doesn't matter what the behavior is. What matters is that it is something that the dog can do in a transactional fashion. Third is play, and this is perhaps the most difficult to comprehend. I'm coming from a perspective in which we are looking at a man named Jaak Panksepp, he's one of the leading authorities on emotions in humans and in dogs, and he has come up with one of the top theories of emotion, in which he has isolated and defined 7 core emotions, of which play is considered one of those emotions. So what does that mean for the concept of play? What it means is we're not defining play as we typically do here in the U.S. and a lot of different Western countries. We are not defining play as an action. We are defining play more as an emotional state. A way you can look at this is play is something akin to enjoyment for the dog, something joyful. Again, it's really, really important to understand what does your individual dog see as being joyful. What kind of behavior is joyful for that dog? For some dogs, it can be traditional play, can be chasing a ball, it can be a flirt pole. Some dogs that are using a flirt pole, for instance, or a ball or a frisbee, sometimes it would be make more sense to define that as work. For a lot of dogs, sorry about if you can hear the noise in the background. That's our two little buddies, Monty and Treason, playing off to the side. Their best buds burning off a little steam.
Oh, yes.
So sometimes what we Western sort of people look at as being play in dogs, that can be a variety of different things. It can be a dog at a dog park feeling bullied into playing. Another dog at a dog park, for instance, might be acting as a bully. None of those are technically what I am defining as play. They aren't joyful, they aren't enjoyable for different dogs. Again, throwing a frisbee could be play, but it also could be work. I use a lot of somebody that I highly respect, Amy Cook, whose concept of the playway. I use this a lot to help some dogs and caretakers to figure out what actually is play for their dog. Without going into detail about what the playway is, basically it is play between human and dog, preferably without toys or food. And I think that's the best, most natural way to establish play with a dog. Dogs who have evolved into their natural environment might play with a stick or a glove or some piece of garbage or something, but play is not the same for dogs that are street village type dogs that don't live with humans. The play we define as play is more of a Western human concept. So having said all that, it is most important that each one of these concepts, these components, need to reflect your individual dog's desires and moods and feelings and what works for them. When we are working with some of these components, hang on one second, sorry.
No worries.
Um,
If you guys have questions, you can always list them in the comment section. So
yeah.
feel free to do that.
And you can list them over the next week or two as well if you have something
Yes.
else that you want to
Yes.
ask us.
Yes.
So what we want to remember too is each dog is going to find various parts, one or the other part of these components, to be more comfortable for them, something that they can do better. For instance, Julian's dog Monty will have difficulty playing, but he will let you know when he needs to relax, and he will be just like, I'm just going to sit here and relax, and he's fine, and then when he's ready, he can get up and do whatever. I'm going to have you talk about those things. So before I give a couple of examples of how these different components can work, and how they don't have to be balanced. I want, Jillian is going to give a little bit of a commentary on what the purpose of transitioning between these three components is. And
Yes.
there's number 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, so the first component for this is to help dogs understand how to transition between a variety of emotional states. So definitely from like fear emotional or anxious or high arousal state, to really helps them just kind of how to transition out of that into relaxation, or how to calm down, especially after a stressful situation, how to get them relaxed from that, because we've seen that with like a lot of the classes
yeah.
too, with like students, you know, after a scary incident or like a loud noise, especially with their small fearful dog class, you know, it's like, oh, they heard a loud noise, well, how do we get them to transition from being so stressed to being like just calm and just relaxed again. So that's definitely,
I'm just gonna
yeah,
peek at
that would be number 1. Number 2 would be how to balance and regulate their daily emotional load. And a really good example would be just, you know, making sure they're not stressed. You don't want to overload and overwhelm dogs. And I think that's what people really have a hard time understanding with dogs, because they want to take them everywhere. They want to do everything with them. And they just want to have as fun, you know, and that's great, because you really should bond with your dog, but you also don't want to overload, you know, overexcite them and then get them overly aroused over something. You know, it's hard for them to really come down from that. So it is a great, you know, from transitions, like if they're very over or they're overly anxious or high aroused, you know, just transition them back to relaxation. And that's what we try to do with our classes. And the third component of this would be how to understand how to self-regulate and what component will help them navigate difficult situations at best. And there's a lot of it's just those fear examples, or if there's really a stressful situations, you know, if there's another dog that's very reactive to them, or if it's another dog that is, you know, if there's another dog that they're playing and they need a break from playing.
The last little bit that I wanted to discuss was, what does it mean exactly that we are looking for balance between components and in the dog's daily life? What that means is we are looking to create situations for our dogs in which these components work together to mirror a normal, natural dog day. So for a well-adjusted dog, sleep and relaxation happen significantly more than play or work. A lot of times we ask our dogs to do hours upon hours of work. And that, not saying that's bad. Some dogs are working dogs. Sometimes they have a job. Sometimes they, you know, a service dog, a herding dog, a variety of dogs do need to work to perform a job. But that is not the average dog. The average dog, the average pet dog, which is what we cater to, is likely to spend more of their day relaxing, resting, sleeping. For a little bit, relax. Do a little bit of work, relax. And if they want to relax for hours, that's healthy. That's fine. We are also, when we are teaching this, we have to, it's very important to understand that every dog is not going to as easily, sorry, these are the idiot boys. We love them dearly.
I could hear them. I could hear them with like the pet or something. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, they're doing something naughty over there. That's
They
okay.
are.
So we may have a dog that can't play well. So if you're transitioning between relaxation and play, you might literally get a fraction of a second of some kind of joyful behavior from your dog before they go relax again. You may have a dog that can do a lot of tons of different, the most relaxing thing for him. You will see him go to that ball being highly aroused and gradually slowing down. Early on, he will be resource guarding it, not in a playful sort of way, where he's doing like what I call the game of mind. So he brings the ball up to someone, and when they go to reach it, he jumps and says, "No, mine." But then gradually he's like, "Yeah, here's the ball," and gradually he might take it over and lay down on his mat for a few minutes and relax. But for him, that's the best way to achieve relaxation. I have a client with a Rottweiler mix that we worked very hard before I developed this protocol to try to get relaxation when I came to their house to work with him, to get him on his mat and relax. And it made him, he wouldn't be jumping on me, wouldn't be over aroused around my presence, but would play and play. And gradually he would take the ball away from, or the tug toy, away from his human and go off in a corner somewhere and just lay down with it. And he might be chewing on it or he might be sitting on it. And then when he would do that, we were able to ask him, "Come on, let's go do a little work. Can you do a sit?" Give him a treat. "Can you do a down?" And he was able to work really nicely there. For him, relaxation never was limited to try to figure out what works for my dog. What does play, relaxation, and work look like for my individual dog?
Yes, and that's what I like about these exercises. It's very much, it's different for each dog. Relaxation is different for each dog. Like sniffing, patting, or just going up and walking around, and play is different for each dog, and work is different for each dog, especially if it's a very shut down rescue or very fearful dog. They don't know a lot of obedience.
Yeah.
So really, a lot of work is going to be for them just to kind of do our target exercise, which is just getting up, and closer to people, or more closer to other dogs too. That's a lot of work for them.
Yeah. Or yes, or even just like our two fearful dogs today.
Yeah.
Just walking around with treat scats, an emotional state that we really want to encourage. So we need to figure out what helps them to relax. What can they do to get some sort of reinforcement? And what can they do that is remotely joyful? Usually these dogs are not going to show a lot of joy. Mm-hmm. So we may see literally a second of the dog maybe running somewhere, or even going off and sniffing in a new spot. That might be as close to joy as we're going to get.
Yeah.
So we work from that, and we continue to incorporate that in with the other components, gradually building on what the dog can do.
Just to relax, and he did that so beautifully and so easily. I know we did have a question earlier. I think people and trainers also should focus on, in my personal opinion, because that's really important for them just to do, not just be like, okay, well, how's this dog going to benefit me? No, it's going to be like, what's good for your dog? And I am trying to find that question.
And another little thing to add on to that is we don't want to stop our dogs from experiencing other emotional states. So if they are stressed or fearful, that's okay. If they are angry, if they're barking,